Hey everyone, Mr. Sujano here. In today's video, we are talking about Cyberpunk 2077, Among Us, Doom Eternal, and Tetris. Let's get started. Alright, to kick things off, if you're a PC gamer, Cyberpunk 2077 has just updated the recommended system requirements. And looking at the requirements, there's both good and bad news here. Good news if you're just trying to run the game, but bad news if you're trying to run the game with ray tracing. We'll start out with the minimum specifications here, and taking a first look, they don't actually look too demanding. These were a little lower than I thought they were going to be. So apologies if you don't meet these minimum specs. If you don't, I would probably recommend upgrading your PC or not picking up the game. So in minimum mode or potato mode, the resolution will be 1080p with the graphics settings running at low. The OS you will need is at least a 64-bit version of Windows 7 or a 64-bit version of Windows 10, which hopefully most of you have by now. If you're running Mac or Linux, it looks like you might be out of luck. In terms of processor, you will need at least an Intel Core i5-3570K or an AMD FX 8310, which isn't too demanding. In terms of memory, you will need at least 8 gigs of RAM. In today's day and age, I hate to be the one to say this, if you are running 8 gigs or less on Windows 10, I recommend at least 16 gigs of RAM on a gaming machine. We're getting to the point now where, in my opinion, 16 gigs is probably the bare minimum. Anything under that and you will run into issues if you're trying to do pretty much anything else alongside of just gaming. But on the other hand, if you're just playing indie games and not trying to play AAA titles, you might be able to get away with 8 gigs of RAM, but I will say it will become a bottleneck pretty quickly in today's day and age. In terms of graphics cards, you will need at least a GTX 780 or an ATI Radeon RX 470 with at least 3 gigs of VRAM. In terms of storage, you will need at least 70 gigs HDD. This is good. So the game's not overly huge. It's big at 70 gigs, but it could be a lot bigger. And it looks like it will run on an HDD. Now it says SSD recommended, and honestly, if you are running an HDD on your computer, an old hard drive, I would highly recommend upgrading to a solid state drive. It's probably one of the best upgrades you can do to your computer if you don't already have an SSD. As soon as you move off of the minimum settings, the hardware specs start to really creep up. You go from an AMD FX 8310 to an AMD Ryzen 3 3200G, from 8 gigs to 12 gigs of RAM, and from a GTX 780 all the way up to a GTX 1660 Super. That's a pretty big leap. And for anything above the recommended settings, the GPU seems to be the big difference here. So for high settings, you will need an RTX 2060 at the very least. I have a 2060 Super, so I will be able to get to the high settings, but I am held back from the Ultra settings because it says here the minimum for Ultra is an RTX 2080 Super. And moving into the ray tracing tiers, and the specifications get even crazier. So if we take a look, I say crazier because I have an RTX 2060 Super, which I think is a pretty good graphics card. It's not top tier, but at the same time, I should be able to be okay in most AAA games with it. But if you take a look, I can only get to RT minimum. That is the highest tier I can get to. The rest of my computer beats these specs easy, but the graphics card is insane. So if we take a look at this, for example, I am wondering if ray tracing minimum would even be worth it for me. Would ray tracing medium graphics settings be okay, or would ultra graphics settings be better? I'm really curious to test it out and see if it's even worth it. But if you get into RT High or RT Ultra settings here, you will need at least an RTX 3070 or an RTX 3080. That is insane. That is a lot of dough for graphics cards in order to run this game. So my whole takeaway from this entire chart is the fact that very few people will be able to experience this game to its full potential. The RT High and Ultra tiers here are going to be experienced by very few. They require an RTX 3070 and 3080, which are incredibly rare to find right now in the wild. They're pretty much sold out everywhere. It's a very similar situation to the PS5 and Xbox Series X, where they cannot produce near enough to make demand. And given the price point of a 3080, which costs what, about 700 American dollars, which is more than the PS5 and Xbox Series X, I really don't think many people at all will even experience the ultra settings. Next up, I just found this out, but apparently there is going to be a new movie called Tetris the Movie, and it will be starring Taron Egerton, who played Elton John in Rocketman. The film looks like it will be based on the history of the game Tetris, and I'm really looking forward to this one. Hopefully it's good. The official IMDb page just says Tetris 2021. Next up in the news is not good news for physical collectors. Doom Eternal is no longer going to be produced in physical format for the Nintendo Switch. Even though the physical edition is still up for pre-order on a ton of different sites, it looks like Bethesda confirmed it will not be released physically. Now this is a bit of a bummer to see, but it's also very interesting considering how close to release this game is. I'm kind of wondering if any copies of Doom actually made it into physical format. If even just a handful of these were produced in physical format, they would be worth a pretty penny. They would become collector's items incredibly fast. We don't have any word from Bethesda as to if there were any produced in physical format or why the sudden switch to digital only. Moving on to Among Us. Among Us is finally getting a new map, and the Among Us Twitter account showed us a new picture of that map, just a sneak peek. There really isn't much more information available. They will be unveiling more information on December 10th during the Game Awards. From this one picture, the new map looks like it has a ton of potential, and a lot of people are really excited about it. Last up, as a bit of a bonus here in the news, this is a spoiler. So if you are playing Demon's Souls right now and you haven't opened the secret door that everyone has kind of found, don't watch the video any further. Maybe just skip to the end and leave a like. But if you are interested in the spoiler, they have found what's behind that door, and it is this armor right here. So you have to collect a bunch of different coins, 26 coins in total, and that will allow you access to the secret door. This armor looks pretty awesome. The armor is called the Penetrator's Armor Set. I don't think it adds anything in-game other than being pretty awesome armor. You need 26 ceramic coins, you change it for a key, and then Bob's your uncle, there's your armor. But anyways, that is all I've got for today. Let me know in the comments below what you think about pretty much everything I talked about today. If you like this video, leave a like. If you didn't like this video, leave a like. Hit that subscribe button, check out my other videos. Thank you everyone, take care.